And wait, Zach. Are you okay with me kicking this off with the general intro, and then I'll hand over to you?
Sure. What? Yeah. I have it the other way on my schedule, but that's totally fine.
Or do you want to
We're
say the first word since
I
it's your
I,
YouTube channel?
I think we're live, so I think it's good. Yeah. Why don't you start
All
us
right.
off in a couple? So yeah, the way I see it is welcome anybody that's able to catch the live stream right immediately. Yeah, Verena, I think you go first, and then maybe I'll go, and then Edwin, or Edwin, do you want to go first? Oh, I can't hear you, Edwin.
I have a bit of an intro prepared on Edwin as well, so
Okay.
I think we can kick it off and I give a general intro to pitch and introduce Edwin and hand over to you.
That sounds great. Yeah, I checked and the stream is up, so we're good. We'll
Great. Is
just.
anyone there yet?
I got 0 viewers. Um, but let's see. Let's see if Edwin's audio comes back before we get
Okay.
started.
Test, test, test.
Yes, perfect.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
All right.
It says we have one active viewer.
Yeah, if you have a link, I'm happy to share it on the Feedly Slack community and put it on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
Is there?
I think Will drop it in Slack and on Twitter, so people can join us. So that should be the first place that you see the link. Or you can go to YouTube and find me, Zach Grosser, and grab the link there. But I think it might be easier if Will shares it. Yes, he is typing. Perfect.
Great.
How's
Up
everyone's
and
day
running.
going?
Good. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Edwin, where are you based?
San Francisco.
All right. How's the
Early
air
morning.
quality? Are you doing okay with the air quality?
It goes up and down. I'm more worried about the forest, and we have a few friends. Yeah, sorry, I had the YouTube stream live, and there was like some echo coming in.
Yeah, I'm sure.
A little bit of fires in the area, so we're more worried about a few people who have houses in Tahoe
Right.
and the forest. Air quality is generally okay. It's not great, but hasn't been a real issue, I would say, at least where I am.
Well, I hope you stay safe. I hope all your friends stay safe. Everybody listening that's in California or the whole West Coast, unfortunately. Verena, where are you based?
I'm based in Berlin, so for me it's the end of the day, just like for you. So looking forward to getting some great tips and tricks from you today.
Oh, yeah. I'm also looking forward to getting great tips and tricks from me today. If I can remember what I was going to say today.
Well,
Do you want to start?
should we kick it off?
Let's go.
Right on time?
Yeah.
Let's go. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm here from Pitch. I'm Verena from the community support team. And in case you haven't heard of Pitch yet, Pitch is collaborative presentation software for modern teams. And with Pitch, anyone can discover, create, collaborate on, present, and publish their best thinking. And welcome to this session. This is our latest Pitch Live Design session. And if this is your first time joining, it's actually only the second time we're doing this. I'll briefly tell you what it's all about. We have our ambassador here, Zach Grosser, and he'll be working on a real-world deck that one of our pitch users has submitted to us in advance. And he's going to give you real-time advice and walk you through all his actions that he's taking to improve this presentation. And he's not going to do any super advanced design magic. He'll just be walking us through his tips and actionable lessons that you can all apply yourself when using Pitch. We want this to be helpful, inclusive, fun, and interactive. So please comments and reactions. It's more of a hangout and less of a school class. I'm really happy to have you all today. And there's just one simple rule: please respect the courage of our guest joining us today. I'll introduce him briefly as well in a moment. And let's all limit our comments and questions to the substance of the presentation. We're not here to give business advice, but we're here to offer presentation feedback. And with that, let's talk about our guest, Edwin. Extra special guest today, Edwin, the CEO of Feedly. That's a leading news aggregator platform. And with tens of millions of users, Feedly is the most popular RSS reader out there. And Edwin has also been a great community member in the pitch community for a long time. So really happy to have you here today with us, Edwin. Thank you so much for joining us. Would you mind briefly explaining the deck that you've submitted to us and what you're hoping to gain from the next hour with us? That would be a great intro to the session.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for inviting me. As you mentioned, I am a very, very huge pitch fan and a Zach fan. So the opportunity to get some coaching and learning how to, use pitch better is very welcome. Um, just a context for the pitch. So Feedly is a platform. We started as an RSS aggregator, helping people follow their favorite sources in one place. The feedback we got from customer is that the web is this ocean of knowledge and inspiration, but can be also very noisy. And so they wanted more help and support when it came to tracking specific topic and trends. So we have, over the last 4 years, focusing on building an AI layer that we call an AI research assistant called Leo. And one of the use cases of Leo is helping cybersecurity with the latest cyber attacks, the behavior of threat actors, the different type of malware. And the pitch we submitted is basically a plan of Feedly called Feedly for Cybersecurity, that is this advanced version of AI that really helps a lot of security teams. We have now more than 200 cybersecurity teams using Leo for their threat intelligence research. Cybersecurity teams are very magic, very busy people. And I would say they're special in the sense that they love marketing that is educational and they hate marketing that is spin. So we are trying to use this pitch more as an educational tool, more, building this concept of slide doc, which is both a mix of a slide and a doc. It's never usually something we present. When we present, we do live demos, but it's a follow-up asset that we send to the team so that they can have a summary of what we demoed and they can socialize the concept with everyone else in the team. And what we hope to get out of this is best practices on how to use pitch. As you mentioned, we've been using pitch for about more than a year now, I think. We love it because it basically gives us the styling power of Keynote and the collaboration power of Google Slide combined into one thing. And I'm eager to see how we can use it better. And I'm eager to have somebody like Zach, who is, an expert in building slides, coach us on how we could improve this pitch.
That's really great. Thank you so much. Yeah, you're one of our earliest customers, so we're especially happy to have you on board for this session. We'll be taking a look at the structure, content, and style of your presentation and help you sell to the specific audience. But more on that from Zach in a minute. We can get started. And if you have a deck that you'd like to submit for a future session, you can join our Slack channel on pitch.com/community and get in touch with us. And who knows, maybe you'll be on the next session with us here. But now over to you, Zach. Thank you.
No, thank you. I'm Zach Grosser. I've been designing presentations for 10 years. I worked at Square and Figma, and then I started freelancing, and now I have an agency, Zoct Studio. We focus on company storytelling and fundraising. We've been an agency for almost 2 years now. There are 6 of us currently. And yeah, we help companies tell their story better, raise funding. We probably do the majority of our work as presentations, and of course, we're big pitch fans at Zoc Studios. Yeah, and I'm based in Amsterdam. That's, I think we mentioned everybody else's location in the pre-show, but wanted to get to that. Edwin, I'm a big fan of you, and I'm also a big fan of pitch. But thank you for your kind words. And yeah, so I thought we would maybe go through your deck and talk about a couple things. For the audience, like, I've taken a look at this deck very briefly. I didn't want to like spend too much of my time like getting into it because I wanted to show that process live. I think that one of the things that I like to start with is this like audience of cybersecurity professionals, and finding out a little bit more from Edwin about who the people that you're talking to are. My understanding, maybe you can help me understand it better, is that this is sort of like a sales motion, but the people that are receiving these materials, like you just said, are getting them after they've had a demo and are already in the cybersecurity realm. So they might have some expertise here, have that more complex vocabulary set to talk about cybersecurity versus maybe a more general audience. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about the specific types of people that are going to be receiving this deck, because I think that's really helpful context when you start building out a presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the audience is, a cybersecurity analyst or a security researcher. Those are the people within an organization that are, looking out and trying to understand what are the different threats to be aware of and that the security team should prepare for or look for. So a very, specific audience. We use this pitch in two places, as I mentioned. It's used either as a qualification tool when somebody reaches out and in getting a demo. We want to make sure that we make the best use of their time. So we send that pitch and say, hey, this is the product we built based aligned with your use case and the type of budget you have, to make sure that there is a quick quality. And then usually there is a demo where, the team kind of discovers what the customer is and doesn't necessarily present everything. Some people are more interested in discovering critical vulnerabilities. Some other people are more interested in cyber attack in their supply chain. So different companies have different sensitivity. We'll try to understand what is it that they're interested in, and then we'll personalize the demo. But then when we're done with the demo, the person we've basically worked with, which is the person who would be using the tool, he's their manager, to try to determine, if they can get the budget for this. So the deck is our tool to empower that champion to socialize the idea internally. Yeah.
Okay, super helpful context. The reason I asked is because I think that, sort of as I was talking about earlier, that a lot of people, when they build these decks, they're so close to their company and their products that they kind of have this set of vocabulary that's very like, can be in the weeds sometimes. And so really knowing the audience is a huge first step to like understanding how to talk to them. For the work that we do, a lot of the times when we're working to make investor materials, you have to think that some investors you're definitely going to pitch towards somebody that already invests in your space, in your industry. But then sometimes you also want to get investors that are not in your industry. And so, thinking about words that you're using and phrases and acronyms that might not exist for them is an important step. So it's really good to know that this deck does seem technical, but I think you have a very technical audience. So let's click through it and just go over the story quick. I think before we get into the design, I think just like a quick run through. The way that I like to do that is through looking at the titles. I also think that one of the things that is really important that I'm really glad you said, Edwin, is that this is a doc. It's a presentation and a doc. And that's one of the things that when I first looked at this deck, I was a little hesitant just at the size of some of the font, because that is something, like you said, is really important to like have an understanding of how your audience is going to be absorbing these materials. So if I was going to like stand and present this, I would maybe make text like this larger, but I think that you're on point. I think like doing something where this is you're going to send it after they've already gotten the demo. I think this is a great size. So yeah, let's click through a little bit. So you're doing the problem statement, right? You've got like the red, which is nice. We can get into the design in a minute, but you've got the problem statement. You're setting some credibility, which is great. I think everyone's probably heard of Feedly, but if you haven't, it's nice to have that introduction. Sorry, one check. Okay. Great. More information. Edwin, are you not able to see it? Just real quick. You might have to pull up the YouTube stream as well. And just maybe mute it. Apologies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Sorry for everybody listening. We want to make sure that we can see the slides too.
I just want to make sure that the feedback I'm collecting is on the right side. It would be
Sure. Yeah, of course. Obviously.
I'll be
great. I do wonder this this quote slide. I was wondering like if there was an attribution to this. Even if you're trying to anonymize quotes, maybe even just being like, cybersecurity industry expert or something, just something to give a sense of like who is saying this, because we do see the large quote. Great. So now you're talking about the AI research assistant. Cool. This is where I get to the place where it gets a little technical for me. I don't know what a MITRE attack with an ampersand in it is, but I think that's okay. You obviously are pitching to your audience. I also just wanted to say, like, when we received this deck, I had like pause of doing this because it is well designed already. I think there are some elements we'll be able to update, but I think this is a great deck. You have great assets already. You have this cute little Leo robot. So, yeah, I did want to say that too as we're going through this and people are watching. Great. So this is awesome. Yeah. This is like what I would call like the Leo product section. We're getting all of the sort of details about Leo, which is very helpful.
Yes, I agree. Leo is very cute.
Yeah. Great. And so now you've got some like use cases, which is really helpful, especially as like you're talking to these cybersecurity people. They've just seen a demo. A lot of the times, and Edwin, maybe you can speak to this, like the demo materials, you either have like a demo account or a fake company or a fake use case that you've put together where you can kind of show how it might work for them. But it's hard for people to necessarily like get a sense for how the product is in real time. So it's nice to have this set of, here's some examples, so they can really sit with it. After they've seen the demo, they're like, I think this is right for our company. Now they can take a look and say like, oh, okay, example 5 is really what I'm looking for. So I think this is really helpful in going through major product key points that you could, help convert some of those customers. Awesome. Cool. So going through these examples still, I sort of, that's one piece of story, so I'm just going to kind of click through it. Okay, and then now you're showing like how, it builds on the future. So I think someone rejoined the call. Did we lose Verena? We'll see. We might have lost Verena. Edwin, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Great, and now this is like extra feature sets. So there is an opportunity here for maybe reorganizing some of these slides. You might want to go through the features and then the examples, but I kind of like it how it is. I think it's flowing pretty well. And this is sort of like integrations, right? So you can start talking about how like it's more than just one thing. You can sort of build on Leo, and now you have all these other opportunities to integrate it with your systems, which I think is really compelling. There's your integration slide. This is also good. I think that, oops, I didn't mean to open Chrome. When you've got leave behinds, I think the more opportunities to hyperlink things, the better. Especially if you're going to export this as a PDF, which you can do with Pitch. You have this, where people can get to it. I don't know, Edwin, maybe you could talk a little bit about the type of demo that you give, but is it something that someone could like watch again later? Maybe that's something you can either embed in the slides or link to as well.
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, so as I said, the sales team usually does a discovery conversation to try to understand really in a very conversational way which of these different use cases or examples are the more pressing for the customer, why they reached out to us. And they typically start by demoing that part. And then, if they can discover, then might basically go back to customer and say, hey, typically we also see this and that. Is there other elements that are interesting? So the demo is usually very personalized, but I really like the idea of maybe having a demo or a walkthrough also available. This is something we don't have now, but I think it would probably be a good idea. At some point, we were thinking of maybe taking some of these use cases and making them so that we can click on it and see.
Oh yeah.
But the search previews are so simple on their own that we decided to keep them super minimalistic. People usually understand them without necessarily needing depth, but maybe having a walkthrough demo is a good idea.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people hesitate about the walkthrough demos because the reservation is that there's not enough context. But because you're having like a conversation with these people before they get to this deck, they've got that context from you. So it is a way that, maybe you can set up the context and then they can see a video recording version without you feeling like they're going to miss something because you've kind of gone over those key points with them in live. And then if it's good, you build the walkthrough, and if you really like it, maybe like an edited down version of it exists on your website or in your help center or something like that. So usually these things are ideally when you make materials, especially like this deck, like it doesn't have just like a single use. It's always better to make things that you can reuse either specific slides or the whole thing again for different, customers or use cases. Maybe you go from cybersecurity to pitching a different type of person, and maybe you just tweak this a little bit. So, and I think that's what we talked about, and we're going to get into in a minute, is the templatizing part of this, so that you can use this again for different use cases. You got a roadmap that's helpful. I'd say this text is maybe a little small, and you've got like the 2001 twice. What I might recommend on just like a design sense is maybe stacking these things on the same bullet. Maybe having like sub bullets to these so that you can group things that happen at the same time. Especially when you're talking about roadmaps. Especially like this says 2001 roadmap, and then it says 2001 and then, 2021, and then 2021 again. And so I sort of imply from this title that it's all 2021. So I would just like see if there's a way to group these beta things and then group the 2021 things, or things that maybe you want to get more granular, and it's Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Maybe it's monthly. I also think for timelines, it can be helpful to go as far back as possible, or even 6 months back, just to show momentum. You've done a lot of things, I'm sure. Feedly's been around for a while. There's maybe other features that have led into this, maybe indirectly. So I think there's opportunities to show more content on this slide. And again, I would maybe only encourage that because this is something that someone might get a chance to read rather than you present to. If you present to, I think less content might be better. Something like this is great. But if they're going to get a PDF version of this or the pitch view link, and they're going to be able to sit on their computer and look at it and read it in their own time, maybe I would show a lot of stuff here, kind of show off. It might be able to help differentiate too if they're comparing against a competitor, and then all of a sudden they see all of the features you have, and then they start going, well, the competitor doesn't have this feature. So just an opportunity to show like more here. Great. I feel like this slide's great because it's future focused, but it also feels like a little bit of a summary. It's like, hey, there's a problem, AI powered solution for you. I think that's nice as we get close to the end of the deck to have some sort of summary, especially if it's not guided. Like you said, they might be reading this at their own leisure. So an opportunity to summarize things. And yeah, pricing. This is a great place to show pricing, obviously. But what I was going to suggest is one more slide at the end with some contact information. I think especially for materials where they're going to receive it and you're not going to be talking with them live. Where's the CTA? You know, if it was a website, you have sort of the CTA at the front of like add to cart or sign up or whatever, test for free. And then at the bottom, you kind of want to repeat a CTA on a website. So I feel the same way about this deck, especially if you're in a sales situation. Like, if they do one thing because of talking with you and then reading this deck, what do you want it to be? It's probably you want them to sign up or talk to a salesperson again or engage with their account manager, whatever it is. I would make a slide like that. A lot of these slides at the end of deck say like thank you. There's nothing wrong with that. You're thanking them for their time, but yeah, what would you like to happen? Also, I think lots of information usually correlates with lots of questions. So the more information you have, the more questions that might happen. And so what's the way for them to ask questions? And that's why I would also end with an email address of someone like an account manager or sales, or maybe you have a sales engineer or something that can answer those questions. So yeah, I think story-wise, I think we're in a really good spot already. I think you've identified your audience really well. Just a couple little edits there.
Yeah, great advices.
Cool. Okay, so now we want to talk about the design, which is great. Like I said, I think the design's really close. You've got obviously really good branding materials. Your colors are consistent. You've got typefaces. So this is a great starting place for most people. For most people, this is good. I'd say ship it. But, you're here for this live stream. Let's like nitpick it a little bit. So the first slide's the only one that stands out as red. Obviously, you're going problem statement here. I wonder if you could lean into it even more. So is there a way to make this stand out even more? So I think there's an opportunity to do that. I also see like 4 problem statements. So maybe we can, just going back to the content for a second, maybe you go into a little bit more, or like let's bold some things to just give some emphasis. You've got the emphasis. Oh, why is my bold not working? Oh, I don't have the font you're using. Edwin, what font did you use? Do you know? I don't know why I'm getting that.
I'm not sure, actually. I start seeing that the bold wasn't activating too in a couple days ago.
Okay. I'm missing your font. That's okay. Let's pick a different one for now. We can swap it out later. So what I did...
It's probably Helvetica.
It's probably Helvetica. Okay.
Yeah, it's the default.
Yeah. See, I don't have Helvetica here. Yeah, what I just did, maybe I did that too fast, is I jumped into the text styles because I wanted to see, like, hey, we have no font here. Let's jump into the text styles. So I went to here and I hit edit, and then I'm going to jump to the style builder. This is one of the things I really, really like about Pitch, is like just the ability to set these styles for the whole presentation. I think this is like the... Yeah, Edwin, you were talking about like this is the best of Keynote and Google Slides. For me, I feel the same way. It's sort of like, what if a presentation software was built in like this decade? Because those are legacy software, to be honest. Like Google Slides has been around for a long time, and that's the newest of the traditional presentation software. So Pitch is new, and so it's what would you have if you thought of it today? And this is, all those traditional presentation software have master slides. Pitch has the style builder, which I really like, especially as a designer. Any designers listening, if you've come from like Figma or Sketch, you've got your style or your symbol that you set, and then you can have that reused over and over again, and then you can go back and change the original, and all of those are going to flow throughout. So it's the same here. Like, this is the headline text. I can come here and I can choose, like, maybe I want to set this to enter. And when I hit save, every slide that's using that style, it's going to update. And so I think it's really powerful, and I'm just going to go ahead and replace some of these so that we can just like do this. Yeah, so you can see it adjust here, and then I hit save. But the other thing that I want to point out while we're in the style builder is that there are a couple other types of slides in this file. I think it's because that I added a slide at the beginning and a slide at the end just for this live stream. But just in case, like, let's go ahead and swap these for Inter as well. Just in case those styles are this style is actually being used on any of your slides. We can just build some consistency here. Cool. So now we've got a font that at least I've got on my computer, which is great. And you can see that shows up here already. These are already switched. So Edwin, we'll get this switched back to your brand font when we're done. We'll make sure that happens. Cool. So as I was going to say, maybe some bolding here. Yeah, increasing. Just a little bit. What's the point? I used to work at a museum. It was my first job ever. And one of the things that they teach you is that the average piece of art gets looked at for 4 seconds, which is really sad because I went to art school after that. And then I had that in my brain the whole time. It's like, that's the amount of attention you get. But slides aren't that different. Like, I do think that people kind of skim presentations for the most part. Edwin, I do think that you have an interesting use case here where people might be reading it as a doc. So maybe not, but you always want to think of, like, if someone looks at a slide for a couple seconds, what are they going to get out of it? I'm going to get manually tedious, time consuming, and then I'm going to go to the next slide. And I think that's good. So design wise, I think we're in a good spot. What I really wanted to talk about with you as I went through your presentation is consistency. Now, consistency is like one of those things that it's the easiest way for a non-designer to make their presentation look well designed. It's like the easiest design hack that I have is like building consistency. And what I mean by that is little stuff. Typefaces is one of them. So we were just talking about like setting all of the slides to Inter, not just the ones that were on the Feedly style, but all of the styles. I just switched them because any consistency you can build, it just is less distracting because inconsistency is distracting. And what I mean by that is, so I'm on slide 4 and I'm going to go to slide 5. So there's a couple things that happen, right? On slide 4, you've got the title in the middle. On slide 5, it's on the left. Now, sometimes you want to use inconsistencies to draw attention. So it's a tool as well. So you want to think about, like, what is jumping? I always use the word jumping when you're clicking through a presentation because it's just like it literally jumps from one spot to another. So if you look at slide 4, we have these 3 cards. Now, the text is running off of 2 of these because I changed the typeface. So that wasn't like it when you sent it to me. So you're good there. But go ahead and look at the corner of this box. And it might be hard to see on some computers if your screen's a little blown out. You might miss the edge of this a little bit because it's a very subtle drop shadow, which I really like. But there's a drop shadow here in a little rounded corner. And we're going to go to the next slide. And you're going to notice that these corners are either pointed or very, very slightly rounded. And they're in a different location. So it's the box here on 5, this box. Sorry, there's a motorcycle running by my house. This box is a little bit lower, a little bit further to the left, and wider. So one of the first things that I would do with your presentation is I would build a template slide for 3 cards. And then I would base each of the slides that are card-based off of that. And this is not like a huge design problem. This isn't like, oh my God, Edwin, how dare you? It's really just where you can reduce inconsistency, you're reducing distraction, and so people are going to focus on the point. So yeah, the first thing I would do is, here, let's see. I'm going to actually just duplicate the slide. That's how I prefer to work a lot of the times, is I'll just duplicate a slide and make changes. I know that Pitch has version history built in for the Pro account, which I love, but I try not to mess up people's presentation because in my use case, I'm in Edwin's deck right now, so I don't want to necessarily like just go and make all these changes that are destructive. So yeah, I'm going to take a look at the layout of this. We've got... Okay, so this is one thing where I get a little nitpicky. Not everybody works this way, but like It's just the way that I like to work. I like to set these metrics in the top right corner here in layout to very consistent things. So I will do like round numbers. Let's do this 340. And then let's think about the width. So maybe we'll make this a little bit wider. Another thing I really like about pitch is it defaults to that 1080p slide. So the slides are 1920 by 1080. That's how I like to work no matter what presentation software I'm working in. Some people like to work to the defaults, but PowerPoint's defaults were set so long ago. They're 960 by 540 slides. So even if I'm working in PowerPoint, I'll make those slides the same size as Pitch has them. And the reason I do that is some of these metrics I memorize and I just get used to. A lot of them are divisible by like 8 or work in that system that 1920 by 1080 is built off of. So I'm just going to set that to, let's see, 560, 480. Those are pretty round and nice. Let's look at those rounded corners. They're 4. I like a little bit more of a round corner. Oh, oops, I turned stroke on by accident. I like a little bit more of a round corner, but that also is going to depend on your brand. So, Edwin, would you say Feedly uses like sharp corners or more rounded corners, or do you have a preference for one or the other?
So I think we use 4 or 5 pixel in the design system in the app, depending on if it's large or small. I think they have but go ahead. Just I think it's really cool. I think the idea of having a grid system and a more consistent way of doing things is really great. Those are the kind of advice we were hoping to get. So I'm curious to see where you take this.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. And you said 4 or 5 pixels. So pitch uses a percentage, which there's nothing wrong about one or the other. It is worth thinking about, like, as you scale something, the percentage is going to change too. So it is hard. You want to make sure that your shapes are the same size if you're using the percentage here. What I'm going to do is, so I set this to 480 by 560, right? But like, let's go ahead and select all 3 of these. So I'm just holding shift and clicking on so that I can adjust all of them at the same time. Cool. I'm going to set my rounded corners. Maybe I like a little bit more of a round. Let's see. Let's do 8%. And then I'm going to use the quick menu and just align these to the top. So I'm just going to type in top and hit return. And now they're all at 340. And this one is at 180. Let's do this one. Align center. And then we can take...
How did you make that menu, the shortcut menu appear?
Oh, yeah, great question.
That's super cool.
So it's Command K on a Mac, Control K on a Windows or a Chromebook. Or you can use the little lightning bolt here up in the top right by the live menu. And then you have all these commands. They're amazing, and there's a lot of nuance here, especially because it changes based on, 1, what you type in, of course, but 2, what you're selected on. So I'm on a text box right now, so it's going to give me some options of how to format it. You can do other stuff in here, like assigning tasks and slides to people, all the workflow options in Pitch. You can open presentations from here. It's a lot. There's a lot of great stuff here. I use it a lot to align stuff. So, right. So I set this one at 180. I centered this one. It's at 720. That's because I used a pretty round number for the width. And then I'm just going to take this one and drag it. I'll hold the shift key. And I actually have my webcam in the way, but get that evenly spaced. So now they're evenly spaced. And then I might do the same thing about like figuring out where the icons are going to sit. So maybe I want them... So if we stick it here, I'm just going to hold the shift key and then use my arrows to jump 10 pixels at a time. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 looks good to me. 1, 2, 3, 4, about the same for all of these. And then I can actually do multiple at once. So I'm going to select both of these. It's just going down 4, over 4. Great. So we've got some consistency there. And then it's just about taking these other elements and aligning them. That's nice. You've got those as separate little checkmark icons. That's nice. I'm going to select the icon up here, and I'm going to use that quick menu again. And I'm going to type in left, and then hit return. And now everything's going to be aligned to the same spot. So I'm just going to do that again. One thing that I think about doing your presentation, because you have all these you have these little illustrations that are really nice. You've got icons that are nice, even the checkboxes. For the version that you're going to templatize, I would make a slide or two at the end. You can even like right click and skip the slide, but just maybe put a couple slides in your deck at the end with like a little library of these, so that if other people in your company are building these, but they don't necessarily know where, maybe they've just joined, Feed League is growing, you hire new people, they join, they don't know where the icon library is, right? Maybe you give them a place to find them. This is also really good as a designer to have those guardrails in place for people that are non-designers, that they're not just like pulling these from the internet, but they're using like the set library that you give them. Yeah, as a designer, I think it's really nice to be able to enforce consistency, but still be able to let people be creative. I always like to talk about that presentation software is usually the only visual way that people can express themselves in non-design jobs. I mean, I've seen some crazy stuff with Excel, but like for the most part, people that aren't designers, they get to do these really fun visual explorations only in their presentation software. So, give them some tools. I'm just going to click and drag these to move them around for speed. Go center this. Center this. And then I'm just going to bottom align these.
I love how you're using the quick menu for everything, Zach.
I love
You're such a pro at this.
Love the quick menu. Okay, and then we've got our title. Also, we were talking about consistency and enforcing things. I like to make these a little bit narrower and then center them. And then we're going to put this at 100. And the reason I make them a little bit narrower is if someone just keeps typing a sentence. Oops, change my audio. If someone just like writes a long sentence, it'll break before it gets to the edges of the slide. If you have, if you set the text box all the way out here, then you've got this really long sentence that, it's just more, it's more pleasing to have like a narrower title, I think. Cool. So I would take this and I would, consider this one of my template slides, maybe, again, a library for these icons. And that way, when you go to make another one of these, it can match style. So I'm going to delete that one. And then what I might also do is maybe create two options for you. Just take like the illustrations up to the top and get rid of the icons. And the reason I suggest that is because if you go to your next slide, you can see what happens, right? You've got the icons at the top, or the illustrations at the top, and then it still works. So you've got like two versions that are very, very similar. I might take all of these down a little bit. Yeah. So it's like maybe having two versions of the same template slide gives people options with and to be creative with to find different use cases, because if they were building this slide with this template, they might not have icons for it, right? And like icons don't really make sense if we also have these beautiful illustrations. So having those two options. Okay, so that's cards. That's like building some consistency with cards. The other thing that I want to talk about consistency-wise is, so let's go to this example section. If you look at the left top, you've got what some designers call the eyebrow, that little tertiary text up at the top to describe something. Example 1, it's not the most important detail on the page, so you make it smaller and lighter, and it's just called an eyebrow because, kind of looks like one. Then you've got your title, then some text, then some subtext, right? So if you just look at where they're positioned in space, as I jump to the next slide, you can see it makes that jump again. So again, just about lining stuff up to the same spot every time. And that's one of the reasons that I mentioned that I like using the metrics, is because it's easy to enforce like position. If everything is at like 150x value and 200, then they're all going to be in the, if you're looking for these every time, it's going to help you enforce that consistency. And that's why I have some of them memorized, is I just try and be like, okay, titles are always going to be at 100 pixels, just as a way to like input that consistency every time. But we talked about using inconsistency as a tool. So when you go from one slide to the other, there are things that change, right? So the screenshot changes, the text changes, the title changes. So you might want to be like, there's something different here. Now this is maybe a more helpful tip when you're going to present the slides versus yours where you're going to just send it to them. Because if someone scrolls from page 11 to 12, they know they've scrolled. But if you're like clicking through a presentation and the slides are kind of similar, so all of these, like 11, 12, 13, text on the left, image on the right, they might miss, like maybe they look down at their phone or take a sip of coffee or something, they might miss that you've moved to the next slide, and they might, their mindset might not move with you. So what you can do is alternate these. We talked about this a little bit on our last stream, but yeah, you could try alternating. Bring your screen over here. I'm going to bring this to front. And then I think this is a transparency. Yeah, this is like a partial. You might want to use a fill color here. So like actually finding that light green that matches, just so that you can do a little bit of layering with this gray without making that green look muddy. Because as you can see here, this is like you get this little hint that it's a transparency, that there's here. Yeah, it's 15% of your brand color, which is nice. Just like finding the actual value at 100%. So you set that to 100 and maybe find like a light green. I'm just guessing right now, but that's just
The second one. Yeah.
Oh, do you have one in here?
Yeah, I think the second one in other colors should be what you're looking for.
Boom.
No?
Thank you. Yes, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Yeah, and so we can just switch this around a little bit. We've got a little hangout there. And then I'm going to set all of this. I'm going to align it left, and then I'm going to say maybe like 1080. Okay, so now you've got like an alternate layout, and so you can switch back and forth between these, left, right, and that just gives you an opportunity to have some inconsistency where it still looks like it's very intentional, like it all belongs, but it keeps it dynamic a little bit. So if someone's reading this, right, they're going to read the title, maybe they're going to jump to the subtext, then they're probably going to look at this screenshot. So their eyeball is over here. So if you were presenting this and you clicked to the next slide, their eyeball's already over on this side. And then they're going to come back across the slide and look at the screenshot. And then you're going to click and go to the next slide, and it's going to be on the left again. So it is a way to like help bring the viewer along. There's like a lot of Gestalt theory and stuff about how people look at things and where their eyes are going to move, but we don't have to get into all that now. But cool. Just some tips there, especially helpful if you were going to present this. Now I know we're 45 minutes in, so I will just jump to templatizing this. What I would do if I was working at Feedly, I would take this deck, I'd make a copy of it, and then I would make one of every layout slide. So we've got, this is our left title, right image, this is our left image, right title, and then I would like delete this slide just for the template. The other thing that you can do is, even if you have multiple slides of the same layout, if they're going to be part of most people's decks, that we were talking earlier about that like library of icons, you could also have a library of slides. Especially when you start like talking about sales presentations, I think it's helpful to have a slide on like your company detail, usually like company size, office locations, board members, executive team, when were you founded, just like the details. Maybe you have a nice map with your office locations, or maybe you have a nice photo of the team or your product, or, and some of your beautiful illustrations might be an appropriate place for that. Someone in sales might need that, right? They're going to like, hey, I'm actually talking to someone for the first time. They're not familiar with Feedly. So they can have that in the library. So when you're building materials for salespeople, think of any slide that might get pulled, throw that in the library. So I would build out a template like that with key things that are going to be used, like we were talking, the most reuse possible. So going from like a single use presentation to like high reuse. What's a slide that's going to get used for the next 3 years 100 times? Start thinking about those. I think it can be a little hard, and one of the things that as a presentation designer, like leaning on salespeople to tell you is honestly the easiest thing. It's like, what questions do you get? What questions do you get all the time? Same with support. You talk about product research and product development. It's like asking the support people is probably the best place to go if you really need some tips on like, where are we going to build next? What do our customers really want? You can do a lot of customer research just by asking the sales and support teams. Same with slide building. It's like, what questions do you get? This is sort of how I recommend appendix get built for investor pitch decks. Is like, what questions do you expect to get from potential investors that are not in your core deck as like the narrative? Same here. Like, what questions are your salespeople, customer support people getting? Throw those in the appendix, skip them, and then what we're going to do is then publish this to your workspace. So once you sort of get everything lined up, you've got a couple template slides like, hey, this is what a card slide looks like. Maybe it's got fake text even. It doesn't necessarily have to be about Feedly. Maybe these are just, you have a couple layouts of like, title goes here, point 1, point 2, point 3, right? You can make a couple of those and then a couple slides where there's going to be a lot of reuse. And then you can come over here to the slide style and publish this to Workspace. And now it's going to jump here to Workspace styles. And then if we go back, let's see. I've got, yes, here what we're going to do. And then save as template is the other thing we're going to do. So the nuance there is like the style is the style builder that I showed earlier. I guess I should have done that a little slower. If we come here and hit edit, right? So this is the style of the type, the colors, right? The charts, the shapes. So that I publish first. And then I'm going to come here and save as template. I think, you can name it something you want. Just call it template. Cool. And then we just jump back to the dashboard in Pitch. And there's a button down here for team templates. That's where we are right now. So this is like the home workspace. This is your dashboard with all your recent presentations. Down here, team templates. So you can see this one. You can edit it. You can create a new presentation from this. But if you're just like in your home and you go to create a presentation, you're going to get it right there. So this is going to be across your whole team. And so if you populate this with just one template, no matter what, anybody on your team that starts a new pitch presentation, it's the first one that pitch proposes to them. They could, of course, go to the template gallery and see all of these amazing templates that are available. But the first thing they're going to see is the one that you've published to the whole team. And this is a great step to building that consistency across your organization. Okay. That was a speed run. Edwin, what questions do you have? Maybe we'll start there, and then we can see if there's time we can grab questions from the audience. Verena might have some. But yeah, Edwin, do you have anything that I didn't address?
No, I think it was great. Just one clarification. So there are usually two type of templates. There's templates that embed in them the story. So it's kind of, it's not only the set of slides, but there is a story. And then I think you talked about the second kind of template that's more of a library of, layouts and individual building blocks that people can use. And in that library, you could even have the icons and things like this. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah. Actually, maybe there's a little nuance there that I skipped over. There's the slide. So we have these slides. They have content on them. They're laid out a specific way. when you go to this disclosure triangle and hit save as template, and then it creates a team template, this template, when we create a new one, is going to have all of that stuff, right? I just hit create presentation. Sorry, it's got our live design session slides, so it's got that purple, but you hit add all 27 slides, and now whoever on your team is starting a new presentation, they've got all that content in there. They've got maybe you've created some icon slides that can go at the bottom. So that's one kind. The other kind is the style that I published. And so that was coming here and hitting save to workspace, and then it shows up down here in your workspace styles. Now the purpose of that is if I were to create a new presentation, let's go back to home. If I create a new presentation and I don't use one of the Feedly presentations, I go to the template gallery and I'm like, hey, I'm going to use this board deck presentation from Pitch. I hit create. I hit add all. Well, these are great. They're the content I want. I needed some help coming up with the structure for my board deck, but it's in this style that Pitch has created that's very different from the Feedly style. And so what you can do is you can hit, I just hit Command A. I've got all my slides selected. I'm going to come, you can come right down here and you can hit this Feedly one. That's the one that we published to your workspace. And what it's going to do is it's going to apply that style across this presentation. So now this is the inter font. This is the font size. Some of the colors didn't switch, so there's a little bit of manual process depending on how these are set up. I probably should have picked one of the templates that wasn't dark slides already, because sometimes there's we can actually look. Nope. Sometimes there's two styles in a deck, and for dark slides. But other than like just the color, we've completely moved this template over to the Feedly style. There's a couple tweaks we're going to have to make, but this is going to save you a lot of time. And so that's the point of publishing the workspace style. Also, what happens a lot commonly when I start working is I'm like, hey, I need a slide that is 3 cards. I might go to the template gallery and look for a slide that I want. Like, ooh, hey, this MRR movement slide in this Chart Mogul presentation, I want that. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to look for it. Cool, this is the slide I want. And then sometimes I just copy these into my decks. And so now you've got that other style. And so you can just switch it to your style. And now, hey, very quickly, we've switched some of these fonts over. You can start very easily adapting this to the Feedly style by pulling multiple presentations from different styles together. So that's the nuance there.
That's great. Yeah, we need to, that's, I think, the next step in terms of maturity for us is to, as we go, we're expanding the number of presentation just to enforce, both consistency and make it easier to build and empowering people to be more creative. I think these templates would be super useful. I think our design team has already done what you suggested with the illustration. If you go into our templates, we have a template with all the icons and illustrations so that we can make that a lot more reusable. But I think the idea of having these different type of layouts also part of the template and using a grid and being more consistent is definitely a great advice. I'm going to jump on it, next week and see how we can integrate that in. One last question. It's like the title is always like positioning the title is looks easy, but it's a little bit not trivial. Is it okay to have some slides when it's centered and then some that is on the left and right? Do you have any advice on like the title layout part?
Yes, that is a really good question. You can templatize everything all you want, but there's always like, well, it's going to change depending on the content. And so, right, you could say, hey, our template is the titles are always on the left. But then you come to a slide like this, and it's like, well, the slide title is kind of just over this left card. And so there's context, right? And that's with everything. A lot of designers don't want to work until they have the content because you're going to base your design decisions on the content. If you told me you needed a 3-card slide, versus if you're like, I need to turn this into a better 3-card slide. It's like, I wouldn't have known to do an icon, a title, a subtitle, a bullet list, and an illustration if you just said, I need a 3-card slide. So there's always like, the content really informs how to design something. And I think it's the same with this. If I looked at this slide and the title was over here, I would say it kind of looks strange to me because it's more left heavy, visually left heavy. Again, we talked about using that as a tool before, about like having things on one side or the other, but my eye is drawn very over here. We see that this space here, if you look where this is located in space, so this is at the 134 point. I just kind of dragged it randomly, but we know the card starts at 180. So first, what I would do if I was just working on this presentation is I was kind of move this to be in line with that. But now you're like, well, now the title's not going to be in the same spot as this slide. They're in a different location already. But this just still kind of looks strange. It's weighted to the left, and it looks like the title is more applicable to threat intelligence than supply chain attacks. So I think using a center, we're just going to center this. Oh, what did I do? I think centering over 3 things like this looks better, don't you? I mean, I think it makes more sense to make a change like this specific to the slide content than trying to adhere to a rule. Because your audience doesn't know what your presentation rules are.
So it would be okay for slide 7 to be left aligned when this one is center aligned, or would you try to both also center align slide 7?
I would center align this one as well.
Okay.
Yes. And I would also make sure that this one is at 100 points and is a 48 point title. I would come to slide 7 and I would do the same thing here. And it's also 48 point, and then you've got your subtitle. I just like nudge it up there. So that looks more consistent. So I would do that. And then I think it's okay that then you jump to this left aligned, even if these are a little further down the page. I don't think there's anything problem with that.
Perfect.
Looking good.
All right. We did have an opportunity here to just write these down. So we talked about, just to recap, we talked about like the audience, of like identifying the audience, thinking about the vocabulary they're going to use, what information they're going to see, maybe something at the end of the deck for them where it's like, hey, this is the thing I want you to do, which is going to be different depending on your audience. So whatever your CTA is, your thank you slide, the contact information slide, whatever it is, even a summary, you want to customize that to your audience. Then we talked about like building consistency, just like we were talking about with the titles, finding a place for things, keeping it in the same place on multiple slides. And then if you're using similar layouts over again, to make sure they're really consistent. So the cards are always, if you're going to do 3 cards, they're the same size and location each time. Even if we have some variability of like, that some of them have illustrations at the top and some at the bottom, that the cards are the same width, same rounded corners. So there's that consistency there. And then using inconsistency as a tool when you jump from, to get visual focus, to catch the attention, using that inconsistency intentionally. And then we just talked about like building out templates. I think that's one of the things that you wanted to do with this deck, is like, hey, we're building a sales deck for cybersecurity, but we also want to enable our team to do other things with this. If we're investing our time in pitch and in this deck, we want to make it as usable in the future as possible. So both templatizing the styles and then the slides themselves. Okay, Verena?
This was great. Thank you so much for all the tips. I'm really impressed with how you're using the quick menu and all the great tips and tricks you've shared with us. Nicely done. I think it's looking so much better already, even though actually you only did small things, right? But it makes such a big difference. What do you think, Edwin?
Absolutely. No, it was great. I took a lot of notes. Um, I'm looking forward to go in and applying this. I think the shortcut menu, Control K, was also a big aha moment for me. This is the thing that amazes me with pitch is, we're already really big fan, but we keep on. Not only it changes every week and it gets better in a lot of ways, but there is also these hidden gem things, which are these superpower user tools, both on the different type of templates and style templates, the shortcuts. So I'm looking forward to go in and practicing this and both try to create better presentation and you know earn some productivity. So thank you so much, Zach. Yeah, for your time. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Edwin, thank you for submitting your presentation and joining us for this live stream so that we could do this together.
Yes, and we can share
Absolutely.
more pro tips in the Slack community. If you all want to join at pitch.com Slack community, you can join our Slack channel, and Edwin is there too, and Zach is there too. We can always discuss more pro tips over there.
Yeah, I love the community. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Edwin.
Definitely a great community. Thanks again for the invitation, and I wish a great weekend to everyone.
Yeah, you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, and have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great weekend. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.